She just sent you a text, and it's sweet, almost too sweet. She's telling you she's been thinking about things, about how she treated you, about all the mistakes she made. She says she finally understands now. She sees what she did wrong, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel this wave of relief wash over you. Finally, she gets it. But then there's this quiet voice in the back of your mind, this whisper that says, wait, why now? Why, after all these weeks or months of silence, after all the chaos and the blame and the gaslighting, why is she suddenly saying exactly what you've always wanted to hear? That voice? Listen to it. Because what you're about to experience is the most dangerous phase of dealing with a narcissistic woman. It's her final trick, her last move on the chessboard when she realizes she's losing the game. And if you don't understand what's really happening here, she will pull you right back in, and this time she'll make sure the door is harder to find. Let me show you exactly what this looks like, why it works so well, and how to protect yourself when it happens. Here's what triggers this entire sequence. There's a specific moment. You might not even recognize when it happens, but she does. It's the moment she realizes that her usual tactics aren't working anymore. Maybe you stopped responding to her emotional outbursts the way you used to. Maybe you started setting boundaries for the first time in your entire relationship. Maybe you simply walked away and didn't come running back when she expected you to. Whatever it was, something shifted. And for a narcissistic woman, that shift is absolutely terrifying. See, narcissistic behavior isn't really about you. It never was. It's about control. It's about maintaining a supply of attention, admiration, and emotional energy. You are a source, and suddenly that source is drying up. Think about this for a second. Her entire sense of self, her identity, her validation, her emotional stability depends on having someone she can influence, manipulate, and ultimately control. When you start pulling away, you're not just ending a relationship. You're threatening the very foundation of how she sees herself. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people think narcissists are supremely confident, that they genuinely believe they're better than everyone else. But that's only half the picture. Underneath all that bravado is a fragile ego that cannot tolerate rejection. When you start to slip through her fingers, she doesn't just feel sad or disappointed. She feels existentially threatened. So, what does she do? She reaches into her arsenal and pulls out the one weapon that's worked on you before, maybe every single time before, the weapon that targets your deepest desire in this whole situation. She gives you what you've always wanted. This is it, the final trick. And it has a name in psychology circles, the Hoover maneuver. Named after the vacuum cleaner, because its purpose is to suck you back in. But here's what most people miss about this tactic. It's not just an apology. It's not just begging you to come back. That would be too obvious, too easy to reject. No, this is something far more sophisticated. This is a performance of transformation. She's not just saying I'm sorry, she's saying I've changed. She'll tell you she's been doing a lot of thinking. She'll mention therapy. Maybe she's actually gone to a session or two, just enough to make it believable. She'll use specific examples of what she did wrong, showing you that she finally understands the pattern. She might even cry. Real tears. Because here's something crucial to understand. Narcissistic women aren't always calculating every move consciously. Some of this is genuine, in the moment. She genuinely believes right then that she's changed, that this time will be different. But genuine in the moment is not the same as genuine change. And that distinction will save your life, or at least save your peace of mind, which honestly might be the same thing. Let that sink in for a moment. She can absolutely mean what she's saying right now. She can feel genuine remorse right now. But narcissistic patterns aren't just behaviors. They're survival mechanisms that have been reinforced over decades. One moment of clarity, 1 week of effort, one therapy session. That doesn't rewire a brain. That doesn't undo years of psychological conditioning. What you're witnessing isn't transformation, it's adaptation. She's adapting her strategy because the old one stopped working, and once she has you back, once she feels secure in her control again, the new strategy will no longer be necessary. So what do you do when she shows up with this counterfeit transformation? You test it against time. Real change doesn't announce itself. Real change doesn't need an audience. Real change happens slowly, consistently, without you even needing to be there to witness it. If someone is truly transformed, you'll see the evidence in how they treat everyone, not just you, not just when they want something. You'll see it in their relationship with themselves. Tell her you need space, real space, months of it. Watch how she responds to that boundary. Because someone who has genuinely changed will respect it. Someone who's running a play will escalate. Now, let me show you how this actually works in practice. Because understanding the mechanics is your best defense. There's a specific sequence to this final trick, and it almost always follows the same pattern. First comes the initial contact. It might be a text, an email, a coincidental run-in at a place she knows you'll be. And it's soft, non-threatening. Just testing the waters to see if you'll respond. If you respond, even neutrally, even just to be polite, she moves to phase 2, the vulnerability performance. This is where she becomes the version of herself you always wished she could be. She's open. She's honest about her flaws. She takes responsibility in ways she never did before. She might share something personal, a trauma, a fear, a childhood wound, something that makes her seem human and wounded rather than cold and manipulative. Here's the thing. This vulnerability is real, but it's also strategic. It's being deployed at a specific moment for a specific purpose. Real vulnerability in a healthy relationship happens organically, over time, in appropriate contexts. Strategic vulnerability happens when someone needs something from you. And what does she need? She needs you to lower your defenses. She needs you to think, maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I didn't give her enough credit. Maybe she really is capable of change. The moment you think that, the moment you soften, that's when phase 3 begins. Phase 3 is the test. She'll do something small that pushes against your boundaries. It won't be obvious at first. It might even seem reasonable. She needs a favor. She wants to see you in person to talk properly. She suggests that you're being paranoid or holding on to the past if you're still cautious. Watch for this. Because phase 3 reveals everything. A person who has genuinely changed respects your pace. They don't push. They understand that trust is rebuilt through consistent action over time, not through conversation and promises. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. We need to talk about why this works. And the answer isn't flattering to any of us. This trick works because of who you are. And I mean that as a genuine observation, not as criticism. If you've been in a relationship with a narcissistic woman, there's a good chance you're someone with a high capacity for empathy. You want to see the best in people. You believe in growth, in second chances, in the possibility of redemption. These are beautiful qualities. They're also the exact qualities she's counting on. She knows you. She studied you throughout your entire relationship. Not consciously, perhaps, but intuitively. She knows what makes you tick. She knows your hopes, your fears, your deep desire to be understood and appreciated, and she knows exactly which buttons to push. When she shows up with this performance of transformation, she's not just offering you a changed person. She's offering you validation. She's saying, implicitly, you were right. All along, you were right about what was wrong, and now I finally see it. Think about how powerful that is. You spent months, maybe years, being told you were too sensitive, too demanding, too critical. You started doubting your own perceptions. And now here she is, confirming everything you felt but weren't allowed to express. Of course you want to believe it's real. Of course some part of you wants to go back. So what do you do with these feelings? You honor them without acting on them. You recognize that your desire for reconciliation comes from a healthy place, a place of hope and compassion. But you also recognize that your feelings aren't always accurate guides to what's actually good for you. Your empathy is a strength. But right now you need to direct some of that empathy toward yourself. Now let me share something most people never consider. There's a hidden timeline operating behind the scenes, and understanding it changes everything. Narcissistic patterns don't emerge overnight. They develop over years, sometimes decades, usually starting in childhood as a response to inconsistent caregiving, emotional neglect, or other early wounds. These are deeply ingrained survival mechanisms that became hardwired into her brain long before she ever met you. The grandiosity, the need for control, the inability to genuinely empathize, these aren't choices. They're psychological architecture. Here's what that means for you. Even if she genuinely wants to change, and some narcissistic individuals do reach that point of genuine desire, the actual process of change takes years, not weeks, not months. Years of intensive, consistent therapy with a professional who specializes in personality disorders. Years of practicing new patterns. Years of failing and getting back up and trying again. And crucially, it doesn't happen in a relationship with the person they've already hurt. This is so critical to understand. When someone has established a dynamic with you, when certain patterns are already in place between you, it's almost impossible to rewire those patterns while remaining in that same relationship. The triggers are too familiar. The old pathways light up too easily. You've become associated with the old way of being. This is why her transformation always seems to fade after you've reconciled. It's not necessarily that she was faking the whole time. It's that the context itself pulls her back into old patterns. You've become part of the pattern. So what do you do with this information? You let it release you from responsibility. You don't have to fix this. You can't fix this. Her healing, if it ever happens, is her journey. And it's a journey she needs to take without you as her safety net, without you as her emotional crutch, without you as her measure of whether she's succeeding. But wait, there's another layer to this we haven't talked about yet. And it might be the most important one. There's a psychological phenomenon called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. When rewards come unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, never knowing which, our brains become obsessed with chasing them. This is exactly what happens in a relationship with a narcissistic woman. You never know which version of her you're going to get. Sometimes she's the person you fell in love with, warm, attentive, making you feel like the center of the universe. Other times she's cold, critical, making you feel like you can never do anything right. That unpredictability, it literally rewires your brain. It makes the good moments feel even better because they're so rare. It keeps you constantly hoping, constantly chasing, constantly believing that the good version is the real her and the bad version is just temporary. Now think about what the final trick actually is. It's another hit of that intermittent reward. After all the cold, after all the distance, suddenly she's warm again. She's the good version. And your brain, your poor conditioned brain, lights up like a Christmas tree. This isn't weakness, this is neuroscience. You've been conditioned to respond this way over months or years of training. Recognizing that this is happening in your brain, that it's a conditioned response rather than genuine intuition, gives you the power to override it. So what do? You treat that feeling of hope like a warning sign rather than a green light. When you feel yourself getting pulled back in, when that old familiar hope starts rising in your chest, you recognize it for what it is, a conditioned response that was trained into you by inconsistent treatment. It's not your gut telling you to go back. It's your trauma bonding activating. Let me leave you with something practical. Because knowing all of this is useful, but it doesn't tell you what to actually do when you're staring at that text message, when you're hearing her voice cracking over the phone, when every part of you wants to believe. First, create a decision buffer. Don't respond immediately. Ever. Give yourself at least 24 hours before any response. During that time, talk to someone who knows your history, someone who saw what you went through and can remind you why you left. Write down what you're feeling. Read old journal entries or text conversations that remind you of the reality you lived through, not the fantasy she's now offering. Second, watch for the 4 tells. There are 4 things that expose a counterfeit transformation every single time. 1. Urgency. Real change is patient. Manipulation is impatient. If she's pushing for quick reconciliation, that's the tell. 2. Conditions. Real apologies don't come with but or expectations of what you'll do in return. 3. Consistency with others. Ask around. Is she treating everyone differently or just you? Real change shows up everywhere, not just with the person you're trying to win back. 4. Acceptance of no. Tell her you need more time. Someone who's changed will accept that gracefully. Someone running a play will escalate guilt trip or try to negotiate you down. 3rd, remember the pattern. This isn't the first time. Look back honestly at your relationship. Has she done some version of this before? The cycle of idealization, devaluation, and hoovering is predictable precisely because it's a pattern, not a series of unique events. Recognizing it as a pattern rather than a unique moment of genuine change helps you see it clearly for what it is, and finally redefine what closure looks like. You might be waiting for her to give you something, a real apology, a genuine acknowledgement of the harm she caused, an explanation that finally makes sense of everything. But that closure might never come from her. True closure doesn't come from the other person finally getting it. True closure comes from you accepting that some questions won't be answered, that some people won't give you what you deserve, and that your peace doesn't depend on her finally understanding what she did. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Walking away from this trick, from this final attempt, might be the hardest thing you ever do, because she's offering you exactly what you wanted. The acknowledgement, the validation, the hope that all that pain meant something, that it led somewhere, that it wasn't all for nothing. But what she's actually offering is a door back into the same house with new furniture. The structure hasn't changed. The foundation is the same, and sooner or later you'll find yourself in the same rooms, having the same conversations, feeling the same confusion and self-doubt you thought you'd finally escaped. You got out once. That took everything you had. Don't spend that same energy again on the same situation expecting different results. The person you're meant to be with, they won't need to lose you to learn how to treat you right. They won't need a crisis to see your value. They won't make you question your own perceptions or feel like loving someone shouldn't be this complicated. That person exists, but you won't meet them while you're still circling the same drain, still answering those texts, still hoping this time will be different. Close the door, and this time, keep it closed.